Good evening, Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to another edition of Talking Point. My name is Faraz Patel. We'd like to thank you, the viewer, for staying with us here on Hilaal TV, channel 347. Now, of course, this year being an election year, Talking Point would like to delve deep into the minds and the aspirations of various political parties, some old and some, of course, entering the new space. We had Rise Mzansi, and now, of course, we're going to be welcoming the Transformation Alliance, of course, a political party that was formed last year. And it gives me great honor in welcoming the leader of the Transformation Alliance, Mr. Abel Atau. Mr. Atau, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us here on Talking Point.
Good evening, Faraz, and thank you so much for having us. It really is a pleasure, and good evening to viewers at home.
No, it's an absolute pleasure having you here. Mr. Atau, of course, bit of a change in the name. I know you once at your press briefing mentioned why there was a necessity for that name change. So the Transformation Alliance, does it speak to the aspirations and the direction that you are heading as a party?
Absolutely, Faraz. I think more than anything, South Africans would agree with us that in 1994, we did not vote for a right to vote, nor did we go to the polls to really have a government that would not take us forward. We were envisaging a change in the country, and that change would have meant transformation for the lives of the many people who are of my origin, Black people in particular, who apartheid had deemed as subhuman. And until now, unfortunately, that dream of 1994 has not been realized. And therefore, it becomes important that we do talk to drawing into the center of politics all those who believe that transformation still needs to happen in this country, and that more of Black people in particular need to be brought out of the doldrums of poverty and inequality that currently is beseeching them.
Mr. Atau, of course, we're going to be seeing a whole raft of new political parties contesting the space. And of course, you as one of the new kids on the block. What does the Transformation Alliance have to offer the citizens of South Africa as opposed to maybe the other new kids on the block?
Look, I think more than anything, I come through with a proven track record of delivery as a leader of this party. And that is a starting point, because what has plagued South Africa is not the lack of ideas, but truly South Africa has been failed by leaders who have not been able to really implement the ideas that have already been in the arena. And therefore, that is the difference that we bring. I think having worked extensively at local government as a councillor as well as an MMC, it gives me a platform to be able to respond to issues that we could not respond to when we were in local government because of the policy nature that would have not allowed us to respond to such. And therefore, it becomes for me an opportunity right now to lead a party that is not aloof, that is not detached from reality, that understands what the issues are at grassroots level and has the capacity to respond to those issues and really make a meaningful difference in the lives of our people. And that is why we stand to offer that is different from many others. This party is not founded out of the ego of an individual or individuals, but it is founded out of the plight of the many people who have always been saying, please put together a team of men and women, South Africans, who can go out there and not go and represent their jackets, but they can go out there and represent our aspirations. My track record, from how I fought for the water in Hammanskraal to the many other issues that I have gone in and really gotten my hands stuck in and getting my hands dirty and turn things around for the many people. And therefore, it is behind that thinking that we believe that we are one that sets us apart from the many political parties. And I think South Africans will respond to that, because the many South Africans whom we've spoken to have always been saying we wanted something like what you are presenting here. You're not about rhetoric, ideologies. You are about plain simple things, and that is why we are saying we believe that South Africa should get back to basics. Because what needs to be done in this country are not the fancy things. We'll get to the fancy things. Let's get the basics right. Let's get electricity flowing. Let's get water flowing. Right now, you've got water shedding masquerading as what they call today water shifting. You've got all sorts of challenges that we have. The most unequal nation on earth. You can go on and on about the problems that are there. But what you will then appreciate with us is that we are that party that can actually change things now.
Mr. Tau, you've spoken, of course, of your track record, and you've been in the city of Tshwane for quite a long time. When you and Action SA parted ways, did you ever foresee maybe joining another political party, given your experience, of course, especially in the city of Tshwane? Or did you feel that it was necessary to form another political party, especially in a contested space that we are at this moment?
Faraj, that honestly, I never envisaged leaving Action SA in the first place. It was really unfortunate, and when politics get to that level of lowness, it really becomes something that it's just plain disappointing. But be that as it may, I think I do believe that I do have something to offer, not just to the people of Tshwane, but to South Africa in general. And it is behind that kind of thinking that I had always known that I would find myself in the political space. Do I think that there was an absolute need to form a political party? No, not at all. I don't think that there was an absolute need to form a political party. But when you look around at what is there and what is available, you then realize that we really need to obviously respond to the challenges that are there. And that was the birth of the Transformation Alliance. But I can assure you that I still believe that South Africa does not need any more political parties. I think as leaders, we need to come together and really map an agenda for the country that will respond to the challenges of the country. It does not help anyone for the many parties that are confusing voters out there to say who really is for us, because in the main, we speak to the same issues. I will be saying my values are family, there will be pragmatism, there will be world-class education, and 20 other parties are saying the same thing. And then you say to all of us, then why are you guys not coming together so that you can really present a stronger position on these issues that you all agree on, and then we then start to disagree as politicians. And therefore, I still believe that there is space for us to collaborate and work together. And I believe that as a party, that is where I am effectively and very hard working towards getting my members and supporters to understand that we need to go in that direction. I believe that it is something that maybe in the weeks to come, we will be able to announce concrete plans on collaborations that will be happening, whether we will also be in those collaborations leading all other parties or supporting a party in going into the ballot. But I can assure you, Faraj, that we've come to a point where we really need to demonstrate leadership as the Transformation Alliance to say we don't have to be the ones in front, but we can lead from any position for as long as we can all agree what needs to happen and how the lives of the people of South Africa needs to change. Then that should suffice to all of us.
One question before we go to the break, Mr. Tau. Members of your party, of course, you being the leader, the Transformation Alliance, their structure is like any other political party, isn't it? Are you using the supposed ANC EFF model where you have a Treasurer General, Secretary General, Chairperson, Chairwoman, or is there going to be something where you base it on what the DA and the Action SA use, for example, having a Senate and having a federal chairperson? How are you structuring the Transformation Alliance in terms of the hierarchy of leaders?
Look, I'm the president of the Transformation Alliance. The hierarchy of the structure of our political party is not one where you have a top six. It is one where you actually have a National Transformation Council, which is led by the president and basically heads of the different, portfolios that are there in the party. So you do have a national chairperson who then heads your National Operational Council, which is your day-to-day running of the operations of the party. But in essence, we have a similar or very close structure to what you would have in an Action SA or in the Democratic Alliance. And for obvious reasons, that you don't want to really get a party that is not functional and agile. One of the best things that you can have, especially as a small party, is to be agile enough to respond to everyday challenges and to respond to the changing landscape in a manner that allows you to be agile. And I think structures such as where you do have a rigid top six, they become too rigid, and then you cannot be flexible enough to be able to, in the structures, respond to the different needs that are needed in modern society. And for that reason, we do believe that we are structured in a way that responds to what we need to do as a party in this current state of things.
After the break, I continue my conversation with the Transformation Alliance leader, Abel Tau. We'll be back after the break discussing the role of the political parties coming into this year's elections. There are many of them. How will they play their part for 2024? Do stay tuned. Welcome back to Talking Point. I'm in conversation with Abel Tau from the Transformation Alliance. He, of course, serves as their leader. Mr. Tau, thank you again for staying with us. We've seen new political parties, of course, enter the bloc in the democracy that we have here in South Africa. Of course, 2009, we saw COPE come to the frame. 2014, we saw the EFF come. 2019 was more of the same, with the similar political parties still being around. By 2024, I think if I stand to be corrected, we are hitting double figures of these new political parties, of course, you being one of them. The democracy that we have, how much of a necessity is there for us to have so many political parties contesting the space?
Look, it is bittersweet because to an extent you are getting a sense that South Africans understand that they need to take their future into their own hands. There is active citizenry. So it is the one part that is good. But the unfortunate part is that it talks of a nation and a group of people who cannot agree on the kind of leaders that they should have leading them. And it is very worrisome. It is worrisome from all of us as leaders because we really need to stand up and be counted. I don't believe that we do need these many political parties that are fragmented. I think, like I said, many of us are speaking to the same issues, and therefore it becomes very important that we find ways to work together, because at the end of the day, it boils down, and it looks like it boils down to egos that cannot come into check. And good leaders should really be people who can lead from the front and lead by example and show that they can actually be led themselves. And that is where we are as a country right now. And therefore, for me, I'm hitting double figures. Really, it is a situation where I genuinely feel that as a nation, there needs to be some introspection that needs to happen. But I think it is the times that we live in. It shows that people have lost hope of what is out there. I think the political system has served to protect and serve itself. And from time to time, everyone who has risen to this space have ended up being swallowed by the political system. And therefore, from time to time, there's many, even within and outside, who genuinely feel that there needs to be change. And I think that's the one thing that we all can agree with as South Africans, is that there is a need for genuine change. I mean, in a country that we have one of the most highest unemployment in the world, one of the highest unemployment rates in youth unemployment in the rate, a consistently increasing unemployment rate, crime that is a well-done war zones. I mean, you can go on and on and on. And therefore, this is what South Africans are actually saying. South Africans are saying we don't have a government. We believe that we are really on autopilot and something needs to change. But equally, we as politicians need to then say, we must understand that we cannot all be leaders, and therefore there needs to be some of us or all of us or those who will lead and those who will get the support. And when we prosper, we all prosper, because it doesn't matter who the captain is, but when the ship goes down, we are all going to sink. And that is where the problem is that we all want to find ourselves in the cockpit, and it's about time that we all understood that we need to be able to support and play different roles as well, and allow those who can lead to lead and wait for our turn, or others wait for their turn, should those ones entrusted with the responsibility not be able to carry out their responsibilities as expected. But I think it is both bittersweet, like I said in the beginning.
Mr. Tau, many political parties are going with the slogan 1994 is our 2024. Is that a sentiment that the Transformation Alliance shares?
Not at all. I think for me, the 2024 will definitely be our 1994. In 1994, there was a clear path that was set before us. We understood what the enemy or who the enemy was, and we understood what needed to be done. You had upstanding leaders who were fighting a system, and obviously we can go on and on in defining what the problems of 1994 were. And therefore, to simply, simplistically bring 2024 to equate it to 1994 would be lazy at best. 2024 is much more than 1994. 2024, for me, is Judgment Day. 2024 is the time when South Africa needs to define itself and decide on this crossroad where we would want to go. There's only two paths, one that leads to absolute prosperity and success for the nation, and one that leads to calamity and total destruction to the country. This country is on the verge of destruction. We have construction mafia that have taken over, where even the police admit that they are not in a position to deal with that. I mean, the underworld is so powerful today that you actually, it is more powerful. You can arguably say it's more powerful than the actual state itself. I mean, we saw during the insurrection, you actually had the taxi industry coming out to do what the army should have done. And therefore, you are living in a state that is absolutely collapsed. We are very close to where Venezuela was or where Venezuela is, and other collapsed states in the world. And therefore, we need to then say, as a people, how do we stop this rot? And to simply say this is 1994, it's not. Today, the enemy may look like us. Today, the enemy may be those who are killing innocent mental patients in life as a demon and get away with it. Today, maybe those who are giving people of Hammanskraal dirty water and killing them, that we have a breakout of cholera and still deny it. Today, our enemies are those who have wiped out millions of jobs and millions in the fiscals because of load shedding and still defend it because they needed to create a crisis so that they can cash in on that crisis. Today, our enemies are not those who were in 1994. It's a different one. And therefore, to simply say this is our 1994 cannot be. I always say to those I lead and those I talk to, 2024 is much more than 1994. 2024 is Judgment Day. If we fail now, future generations are going to judge us harshly to say, what did we do when the country was collapsing? And that is why some of us are really enthused to stand up and really, under difficult circumstances, say we are going to do whatever it takes to rid this country of those who failed us up to this point, but also to put on the table an alternative offer that can take this country forward. And really, from now on, because really, if we don't get it right now, I can tell you 20 years from now, there won't be a country to talk about. But if we do it right now, it's going to be difficult for a few years. But 20 years from now, those kids who are starting school this year might have a country that they can be proud of.
Mr. Tau, whenever you speak to the people of the street, leadership and the lack thereof of it across all corners of the country is there for everyone to see. Do we have a leadership crisis within South Africa?
Yes, we do have a leadership crisis within South Africa. I think one of the biggest challenges that we've had, and maybe to dissect it even further, is the unfortunate situation we've had, because what apartheid has done, among some of the things, was to ensure that it damages the mind of the black man. And I can assure you, I think there was an apartheid leader that had made a bold statement to say, we cannot lead ourselves, or a black person cannot lead. And they were speaking from a position that they knew that our minds have been damaged. And I am not saying this as a racial issue. that I want to demean and undermine the many great black leaders that have led before us and that are there today and that are still to come. But the problem that we have is that those who necessarily are not leaders have gone to the front because they've amassed the type of boldness and courage that has given them the kind of bravado that suppresses a lot of what would naturally be leaders. South Africa is at a point where the one who makes the biggest noise is given the platform, and not the one who makes the most valuable contribution gets the platform. And therefore, that has progressively ensured that those with ideas are pushed outside, and progressively we've seen a drain in terms of wisdom, leadership, and that is where we currently are. And we need to make sure that we bring that back into society. I mean, I can tell you now, Faraz, that there are things that we have allowed and tolerate even in normal society that cannot be tolerated in any other society, and we have coexisted with them because over time we have learned to live with these things. And that is what we are advocating for, that a reawakening of some sort in this country, and it must start at the top. We need to make sure that we remove this current government and make sure that we start showing South Africans where they need to be. Because if you take an eagle that has never flown ever and you raise it with chickens, it may believe it is a chicken. But until it sees other eagles flying and it is given a space to spread its wings, it will fly and live like a chicken. And that is what South Africa is, and that is where we are. We've been accustomed to mediocrity to a point that we have become numb to the reality that this is hurting us, and that needs to change, and it needs to change now.
After the break, I continue my conversation with Abel Tau. We're going to discuss some of the core problems facing South Africa, some, of course, he may know quite well with regards to the water crisis in Hammanskraal. Do stay tuned. We'll be back on Talking Point. Welcome back to Talking Point. I'm still in conversation with the Transformation Alliance leader, Abel Tau. Mr. Tau, many problems facing South Africa right now, but before we discuss some of the ones that you are quite familiar with, I want to talk about Triple BEE. Now, Action SA, a party that you are part of course, said that they would scrap it should they come into power because they see it not being feasible within South Africa's business space. Is that a sentiment that you share?
It is unfortunate to hear the leader of Action SA talking about scrapping BEE when he is a beneficiary of BEE. And now that he's crossed the river, he wants to really destroy the boat that took him across. Look, there's been glaring failures when it came to broad-based black economic empowerment and everything else. And I don't care what people want to call it. Reality is that South Africa is not at a point where it can scrap a system that will progressively and deliberately advance black people out of poverty and also into the mainstream economy and into the ownership of the economy. The economy of this country is still largely in the hands of white people. And one of the problems that we have as politicians and as South Africans is that we are too afraid to talk about the problems that are there, and that is why we can never respond to the problems of this country because we don't want to name them. This country comes from a very sad reality of apartheid, which was race-based, and it was deliberately designed to advance white people, Afrikaners in particular, above every other race in this country, as well as above black people, where we were in the bottom of the food chain. And therefore, it cannot be correct that 30 years later we are saying a lot should have been done, or we are done, we should then move on, and then everyone must pull themselves out by their bootstraps when they don't even have the boots to start with. Therefore, I do think that we need to look at the mechanisms used to empower people, but definitely we still need an empowerment scheme that looks at getting people, black people in particular, on par with the rest of their counterparts in this country. There's no running away from that reality, and therefore, I don't know where do they get to a point where somebody would wake up and stand up and say, BE has failed, let us make sure that we go pure capitalism. It's not even China is a pure capital social country, and therefore you can never have a country of purists, whether it's pure capitalism or pure socialism or whatever ism it is that people think can rid this country of its problem. What we need as South Africans is to have a system in place that recognizes individuals that are innovating out there in communities and have a capable state that will then dispense a state apparatus and opportunities to ensure that those people succeed. We need our own Silicon Valleys of sorts. We need to ensure that we have some form of incubation for business so that we then start generating and creating authentic business people. There's a lot of people who have great ideas in the different townships where we go and meet them, and some have actually started innovating and finding ways to bring their ideas into life, but unfortunately they don't have the support of a caring government that can ensure that that actually happens. I mean, I sit here and think, what would have happened if Elon had he stayed here in South Africa? He probably wouldn't be the richest man on the planet today. But that is not what this country should be about. And that's the sad thing, is that South Africa has immense talent. And from time to time, we definitely demonstrate that we are that country that can be a world leader. We should take our place amongst the nations of the world, but it starts with having the right government at the helm, with the right policies, and making sure that we advance the right people and not those with the right connections and the right surname and the right friends.
Mr. Tau, let's talk about the water crisis. And I want to obviously focus specifically on Hammanskraal because this is where the source of the cholera outbreak happened. The community had been crying for years that there is a problem with the waterworks, that there is no clean water, and it put that community at such a risk. It's a problem, isn't it? Because there we have a community that has been crying out for help for the 3 decades for pure, accessible water. And unfortunately, it just hasn't come to them. As somebody who, of course, still serves the community of Hammanskraal, how much of a problem is it that this is a community that can still not find a way to get clean, accessible water?
For us, this is a crisis of epic proportion. I do think that this should definitely be declared a crime, one way or the other. It truly is sad to see what is happening to the people of Hammanskraal, especially to a middle-income country. Now, let me tell you, for us, the poor people of Hammanskraal, get to a point where, because water is delivered on water tankers from time to time, poor families that cannot afford have gotten to a point where they give their little girls as early as young as 16, 17 to people who are ferrying water into the community as people that they can date so that they can get water. That's a fact. You meet such people where really that's how far this thing has gone. And it is sad because this is a man-made crisis. I can tell you now that the water trucking or the water delivery business is booming in Hammanskraal. And therefore, this problem stems from that point, number one. But two, it is from the greed of politicians and officials to an extent that everyone is fighting to say who is going to be benefiting or who is going to be putting their hands onto the now 3 billion that is needed to fix Royal wastewater treatment works. And politicians are greedy there because that is what this is about. We
Mr.
knew
Tau,
as far
did you
back
just
as
say
2006.
You said girls are dating. So the families are giving their girls to date just to access water. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Is government not aware of this extortion? Because this is extortion, and I don't know if I'm putting this mildly, but this is sort of like indirect slavery that is currently happening right here in South Africa. I mean, this is not supposed to be happening.
It shouldn't be happening in South Africa, but unfortunately, this happens right under our noses. And unfortunately, this situation is so bad because in 2019, no, 2021, I actually led a picket outside the Temba police station for obviously a different challenge that was there in Hammanskraal, but equally for this one. So what you have is really a systemic failure from every angle because these young women, even those who want to come up and say, really, we are being sold to sex slavery because we must access water due to lack of access to water. If you ask them to come forth and go to a police station, they'll tell you straight that we cannot do that because our lives will be in danger because even the police are in on this thing. I mean, Hammanskraal police station, I'm sorry to say this, but it is just as bad as Sunnyside police station, if not worse. And therefore, that is one of the biggest challenges that you have because you are not going to be able to assist these people because they'd also lost faith in the police. I mean, we reported a case of a couple that was knocked down by an illegal driver who the and escorted and tried to clean the scene for that particular individual. It's on record, it's there. So the problems that are beseeching our people are insurmountable. There is collapse of government and governance, and therefore people are on their own. What you see happening in Soshanguve North right now, what they call juke lane. I mean, it happens all the time. People get gunned down and mowed down. One of the most dangerous areas in the city of Tshwane, the same way you have the problems that you have in Diepsloot. And I can go on and on, Olivenhout Bosch. The problem is that our people are left on their own with their own devices to fend for themselves. And that is why I'm saying this election is far much more than just 1994, where there needs to be a regime change and hope that things will get better. This is about turning the trajectory of where this country is heading and pointing it into a direction of healing and recovery. Because if that doesn't happen, I can assure you there won't be a country left for us.
Mr. Tau, one final question before we go to the break. Service delivery was another challenge in the city of Tshwane. We've seen, obviously, waste removal, the workers of waste removal, represented by their various unions, going on quite a lot of weeks in terms of a strike. That's an issue, isn't it? Because service delivery, I mean, it's the capital city of South Africa. Surely there has to be pure out-and-out service delivery. I mean, that's something that you may have observed, isn't it?
No, absolutely. Service delivery has collapsed, but we told the residents of Tshwane before the election. I was a mayoral candidate for Action SA, and I told them that Mayor Randall Williams was not up to scratch. I had worked with Randall Williams before in the DA, and I knew the man. And I knew that he was not committed to making sure that he delivered services to the people of Tshwane. And true to the script, Randall Williams left halfway through. He was pushed by the DA. They brought back the mastermind of the Glad Africa debacle, Mr. Silias Brink, who was the MMC responsible for corporate and shared services when the Section 21 was done on Glad Africa. So you have a lot of problems, even worse now. Action SA has brought in a deputy mayor who stole 10,000 rands from the city. So I can assure you that the citizens of Tshwane are on their own. But be that as it may, there is hope. I'm hoping that we can be able to get the city going until 2026. But also, the failure of provincial government to really step in when it needed to is really unfortunate in the city of Tshwane, because for many months, we've sat with a city that was insolvent. They themselves had said they don't have money. Service providers are not being paid. In the city of Tshwane, there's a rotation on when you get to be paid, and it has bred now an environment of corruption where if you are friends with officials, your company will be paid their invoices, and if you are not, I mean, then you are not. I mean, services have come to a complete standstill in the city, and trust me, you know, it's a mess. And what's even sad is the fact that this is also experienced in the townships and the flashy suburbs in the east of Pretoria. At least they continue to get the services. And it is unfortunate that in 2024, you see scenes that resemble scenes that should only be happening in 1984, where only certain people and classes would be given services. I mean, we see today in 2019, there were floods that happened. We all made bold predictions and promises to the flood victims of Mamelodi. To this day, nothing has been done to put them into safe spaces. There will be another flood. Politicians will rush to Mamelodi and people will be promised some more. When I left, we had procured the land. In fact, MEC Maile and I worked together to procure a piece of land on the other side of Tshwane. But unfortunately, that land is not yet inhabited by the people it was intended for. But what I can tell you is that even if they were to go there, there's no services, and chances are they won't have services until 2030. Because the city of Tshwane is not prepared to do what it's supposed to do. You have a township that was established and RDPs built and a lot of development and infrastructure was put on the other side of Bronkhorstspruit in Refilwe and in Zitoveni Heights. That infrastructure is dilapidating as we speak because pipes, when there is no running water on those pipes and they are buried underwater, then they decay and they are going to break and we are going to have to do the work again. But that happens because the city has got people who are incompetent at the helm, who don't know what they are doing. And unfortunately, for as long as they satisfy their political bosses, that is the only criteria that is needed to be at the helm in the city. You just have to make sure that you are the biggest praise singer to Helen in Cape Town, or you are the biggest praise singer to Herman now in Sandton, and then you get your position, and immediately you become somebody who is for the people, then you become a problem in the city. And that is why PTA was formed. We were formed to say we don't want to be beholden to people who want to be praised at the expense of services in the city.
After the break, I wrap up my conversation with Abel Tau from the Transformation Alliance. We're going to ask, what is their expectations heading into this year's elections? Welcome back to Talking Point. Wrapping up my conversation with the Transformation Alliance leader, Abel Tau. Mr. Tau, of course, this year's elections is for provincial and national, ultimately. If I were to ask you realistic expectations from the Transformation Alliance, what would you tell me that they are?
Realistic expectations from the Transformation Alliance is to, at this late stage, conclude a working arrangement, which is at its finality with one party. I think that, like I said at the beginning of this conversation, we need to be realistic at our chances and make sure that we don't muddy the water further than it has. I mean, we've seen the emergence of the likes of MK and all of these things that have been happening. And it becomes important that we don't create further confusion for South Africans. Now, does that mean we are folding? Definitely not. We will not be folding. But I think we have taken a conscious decision that as a party, we are going to be working with others. The conversations are probably at a very advanced stage. How that is going to take shape, that will be announced in the next few weeks. But I can assure you that we are going to be working hard together with our partners. We do believe that we can amass enough support from South Africans to ensure that we become part of a coalition government after these elections. So we won't be going it alone, that's for sure. And we and those that we are partnering with, which we will announce in due course, will definitely make sure that we put up a brave fight. Because at the end of the day, it does not help to go into this election as fragmented as South Africa political parties are, who speak in the same language. So there is definitely a number of things that we'll be pronouncing on in the days to come. But realistically speaking, if we were to go at it alone, we were hoping to do not less than at least 6 seats in parliament. We were looking to contest in Limpopo, in Mpumalanga, in Gauteng, as well as in the Northwest. We believe that we were going to do well enough. We would be represented in all those legislatures. We believe that we still will be, together with those we may partner with. But if that does not happen, we are definitely contesting this election and we are going to go full steam ahead. We believe that we've got enough support and we've got a big enough mandate to do what needs to be done.
Mr. Tau, do you foresee a coalition government for Gauteng? Because when we look at, of course, the trajectory it's heading at, there's a big possibility that could happen. Of course, the EFF has their candidate for the Gauteng Premier. I mean, ANC's Panyaza Lesufi looks to keep his position. Then, of course, the DA has somebody they would like to have within fighting for their seat. So, do you see the potential of a pure out-and-out coalition for Gauteng?
Yes, it will. And Faraz, I can tell you, we will also be having our own men for Gauteng, whom we believe can actually rescue the citizens of Gauteng. We are quite confident that when we announce who will be our candidate for Gauteng, people of Gauteng will really realize that we have put in a lot of thought in the kind of situation they find themselves in. But definitely there will be a coalition in Gauteng. And as to who would want to work with, that is something that would be discussed once the results are in. But one thing is for sure, is that a lot of work needs to be done in Gauteng. It boasts 25% of the GDP of the country. It is really the economic capital of the country. It is the eyes through which the world see us as a nation. Here in Gauteng, both in Pretoria and the economic hubs that we have in Johannesburg, but also it is how the world sees Africa. If we are to make sure that we have a Gauteng that works, we'll have a South Africa that works, and the world will be encouraged to see an Africa that really is working and progressing. And therefore, Gauteng deserves better than what it has had over time. I mean, you look at what currently is happening. We've had children dying, because of negligence in open trenches that are left by projects that are not finished, both from schools to roads to infrastructure in general. We've seen flash flooding because infrastructure is not looked after. We've looked at the traffic situation that cannot be resolved because people cannot be innovative and find new solutions. I mean, we can go on and on and on, let alone talking about the corruption that has happened and continues to plague this province, where people have gone scot-free and have been left to get away with murder practically. And therefore, we are saying people of Gauteng, actually, they need to give us their confidence when it comes to this province in particular, and give it to us as the Transformation Alliance, together with our partners, that we will announce if they are on board. But definitely, if not, we will be part of the government of Gauteng in the next term.
To wrap up this conversation, Mr. Tau, how important is this year's elections? I know we stress on the voter making their mark, but 2024, given that this is the third decade of our democracy, how important is this election for the future of South African people?
Like I said, Faraz, this election is very, very important. Look, it is a defining moment for South Africa, and I hope we rise to the occasion. Honestly, if you look at where we are, we finally have an opportunity, a realistic opportunity, to press the reset button. I think, in the words of someone, even someone who has been given a life sentence, after 30 years, you are allowed to go on parole. And I think South Africa have repaid what they owe the ANC. If we owe them for fighting for freedom in this country, they've had their 30 years in the limelight, they've looted this country, they sold it to the highest bidder, they've really spit in the graves of our people, and they've made a mockery of this democracy. People don't believe in democracy anymore, and therefore it becomes very important to raise hope, and this is the election that will revive hope. Should we fail to ensure that South Africans see value in voting, I can assure you that next elections there's going to be more and more less turnout, and we are going to see more and more lawlessness in this country, and this country will go the same way as all other failed states. And what would be said would be that this is a country that had so much potential in 1994 when this new nation was born, and we dare not allow this nation to go down that route where it becomes a failed state. We want to fight this nation. We are going to fight for this nation, and we are definitely going to make sure that we bring a future that our kids and our grandkids can be proud that our parents stood up when it mattered the most.
Mr. Tau, thank you so much for joining us here on Talking Point. Much appreciated, and all the best leading up to the elections.
Thank you so much for us, and look out because there's so much that will be happening. But definitely, the Transformation Alliance is here to make a difference in the South African political landscape. Thank you for having us.
It's an absolute pleasure. Transformation Alliance, one of the new kids on the block heading into this year's elections. That's all we have for you here on Talking Point. We'll see you again, same time, same place next week. From myself, Ras Patel, and the rest of the team, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.